The rain came down hard that Tuesday morning, drumming against the windows of the upscale coffee shop on Fifth Avenue. Inside, the warmth was accompanied by the sound of steaming espresso machines and quiet conversations. Business people tapped away at laptops. Students highlighted textbooks. A young mother tried to calm her toddler while balancing a latte. It was the kind of place where everything cost $7 and came with a smile. The kind of place where everyone belonged. Except him. He stood outside the glass door for a full minute before entering, rain dripping from his worn jacket, his boots leaving wet prints on the polished floor. His clothes were stained, his beard untrimmed, his hand shaking slightly as he approached the counter. The barista, a young woman named Sophie, looked up from the register and her smile faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone shifting from welcoming to cautious. "Water," the man said quietly. "Just water, please." Sophie hesitated. She glanced at a manager, a man in his 30s standing near the espresso machine. He caught her eye and gave a small shake of his head. "We only serve customers," Sophie said, her voice apologetic but firm. The man nodded slowly. "I understand." He turned to leave, his shoulders hunched, his movements slow and deliberate. And that's when it happened. As he reached for the door, his sleeve rode up, revealing his form. Just for a second, just long enough. A tattoo, faded but unmistakable. A skull with wings. 3 words beneath it, "Do Oppresso Liber," the Latin motto of the United States Army Special Forces. A woman sitting near the window saw it. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, off-duty Army reservist, and she recognized that ink immediately. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Everyone turned. "Sir," she called out. The man stopped but didn't turn around. "Sir, please wait." He slowly faced her, confusion in his eyes. "That tattoo," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "You served." The man didn't respond. "How long?" she pressed. 22 years, he said quietly. "Delta Force." The coffee shop went completely silent. Sophie's hand froze on the register. The manager stepped forward, his expression changing. Lieutenant Chen pulled out a phone and made a single call. She spoke for less than 30 seconds, then hung up. "Help is coming," she said. The man shook his head. "I don't need help. I just needed water." "You're getting more than water," she replied. 10 minutes later, the first black SUV pulled up outside. Then another. Then 4 more. 12 men stepped out, all in civilian clothes, all moving with the same disciplined precision. They entered the coffee shop in formation. No words, no explanation, just presence. The lead man scanned the room, his eyes landing on the homeless veteran still standing by the door. He walked directly to him and stopped. His voice was quiet but carried through the entire space. "Sergeant Major Mitchell." The homeless man's eyes widened. "Captain Reeves, I thought you were still overseas. Got back 3 weeks ago. Heard you were out here." The sergeant major looked down. "You shouldn't have come." Reeves stepped closer. "You pulled me out of Kandahar. Carried me 2 miles with a bullet in your leg. You think I wouldn't come for you?" The other operators stood silent, forming a protective circle around their brother. One by one, each man stepped forward and embraced him. No speeches, no grand gestures, just brothers reuniting. Sophie stood behind the counter, tears streaming down her face. The manager looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Lieutenant Chen watched with her hand over her heart. And everyone else in that coffee shop learned something they would never forget. Before we continue this story of loyalty, brotherhood, and what it really means to serve, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe every veteran deserves respect regardless of their circumstances, hit that subscribe button, because these stories matter. His name was Daniel Mitchell, 51 years old, once a sergeant major in the United States Army's 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, better known as Delta Force. He'd served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and places whose names never made it into official reports. He'd led teams through impossible missions, saved lives, lost friends, and carried scars both visible and invisible. But that morning, standing in an overpriced coffee shop with rain dripping from his worn clothes, he wasn't a war hero. He was just another homeless veteran that people crossed the street to avoid. It hadn't always been this way. 2 years ago, Daniel had a home, a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was his. He'd been working security at a corporate office building, using his military discipline to keep the job steady. But the nightmares got worse. The flashbacks became more frequent. He'd wake up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, convinced he was back in Helmand Province. His hands would shake during the day. Loud noises made him drop to the ground. His co-workers started noticing. His supervisor suggested he take some time off. Get help, he'd said. Talk to someone. Daniel tried. He went to the VA hospital, sat in waiting rooms for hours, filled out forms, talked to counselors who meant well but didn't understand. They gave him pills that made him feel numb, therapy sessions that felt like interrogations. He stopped going. The nightmares continued. The flashbacks intensified. And one day, he just couldn't go back to work. Couldn't face the fluorescent lights and the small talk and the pretending that everything was fine. He stopped showing up, lost the job, fell behind on rent. The eviction notice came 3 months later. For a while, he lived in his car. Then the car broke down and he couldn't afford to fix it. So he started sleeping in shelters, under bridges, in doorways, anywhere he could find. He wasn't an addict, wasn't an alcoholic. He was just a man whose mind had finally broken under the weight of everything he'd seen and done. And the world moved past him like it didn't exist. Until that rainy Tuesday morning when Captain Marcus Reeves walked back into his life. Reeves had been a lieutenant when Daniel saved his life in Kandahar. It was 2009. Their team had been ambushed during a routine patrol. Reeves took shrapnel to the chest and leg. The rest of the team was pinned down. Daniel had made a choice. He ran into enemy fire, threw Reeves over his shoulder, and carried him 2 miles to the extraction point. He'd been shot once in the leg, once in the side, but he didn't stop, didn't slow down, just kept moving. When they finally reached safety, Daniel collapsed. Reeves survived, went on to command his own team, rose through the ranks, never forgot the man who saved him. And when he returned stateside 3 weeks ago and heard through the veteran grapevine that Sergeant Major Mitchell was living on the streets, he made a phone call. Then another, then 10 more. Within 48 hours, he'd located 11 other men who'd served with Daniel. Men whose lives he'd saved. Men who owed him everything. They agreed to meet, made a plan. And when Lieutenant Chin made that call from the coffee shop, they mobilized. Now they stood in a circle around their brother, and Reeves spoke clearly. "We are getting you off the street. Today." Daniel shook his head. "I don't want charity. This isn't charity," Reeves said. "This is a debt." "You don't owe me anything," Daniel replied. "Yes, we do. All of us." Another operator stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Carlos Hernandez. "You remember me?" Daniel studied his face, then nodded slowly. "Hernandez. Mosul, 2016. Hernandez smiled. "I got separated from the team. Surrounded. You came back for me. Alone." Another man spoke up. Chief Warrant Officer James Park. Kabul, 2012. You took a bullet meant for me. One by one, they shared their stories. Moments when Daniel had been there, had made the impossible choice, had put their lives above his own. And now it was their turn. Reeves pulled out a folder. We've been working on this for 2 weeks. There's an apartment. First and last month paid. Furniture's being delivered this afternoon. We've also set you up with a therapist. Private practice. Former Army psych. She specializes in what we deal with. Daniel's hands were shaking. I can't accept this. You already did, Reeves said gently. You carried us. Now let us carry you. The coffee shop was still completely silent. Every person there was witnessing something they'd never seen before. True brotherhood. The kind that doesn't fade with time or distance or circumstance. Sophie, the barista, stepped out from behind the counter. Her voice was quiet but steady. Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Daniel looked at her. You couldn't have known. But I should have treated you better anyway. You were just doing your job. No, she said, tears running down her face. I should have given you water. That's basic human decency. And I failed. The manager approached. Sir, from now on, you come here anytime. Anything you want. On the house. Daniel shook his head. I don't need handouts. Then come as a customer, Reeves interjected. He pulled out his wallet and handed the manager a credit card. Put $1,000 on account. For him, whenever he comes in. The manager nodded and processed the transaction immediately. Lieutenant Chen stepped forward. Sir, I'm Army Reserve, 412th Civil Affairs Battalion. I've heard stories about Delta operators my whole career. Never thought I'd meet one. She extended her hand. Thank you for your service. Daniel shook it, his grip still strong despite everything. And you for yours. Chen smiled. We are setting up a veteran support network in this city. Would you be willing to help? Share your experience. Help other guys who are going through what you went through. Daniel hesitated. I don't know if I'm the right person. You're exactly the right person, she said. Because you've been there. You know what it's like. And you survived. Over the next hour, they sat together. All of them. The operators, Daniel, Lieutenant Chen, even Sophie and the manager. They talked. Made plans. Exchanged phone numbers. Set up check-ins. Reeves handed Daniel a phone. Prepaid. Unlimited. All our numbers are already in there. You call anytime, day or night. Any of us will answer. Daniel looked at the device like it was a lifeline. Because it was. That afternoon, they took him to the apartment. It was small but clean. 1 bedroom, kitchen, bathroom with a real shower. The furniture arrived an hour later. Bed, couch, table, chairs. The operators helped set everything up. Hernandez stocked the fridge with groceries. Park set up the TV and Wi-Fi. Another man, Sergeant First Class Michael Torres, laid out new clothes. Jeans, shirts, jackets, all in Daniel's size. This is too much, Daniel said. It's not enough, Reeves replied, but it's a start. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Daniel Mitchell slept in a real bed. In a room with walls and a door that locked. Safe, warm, and not alone, because every hour, his phone buzzed with a message from one of his brothers. Just checking in. You good? Need anything? And each time, he replied, I'm good. Thank you. The coffee shop incident didn't go viral. No one filmed it. No one posted it online. But word spread anyway. Quietly. Through the veteran community. Through the neighborhood. Through the people who'd been there. Sophie started volunteering at a homeless shelter twice a week. The manager created a policy. Any veteran could get a free coffee and pastry. No questions asked. Lieutenant Chen's support network grew. Daniel eventually became a peer counselor, helping other veterans navigate the system, showing them they weren't alone. And every Tuesday morning, Daniel walked into that same coffee shop. He always ordered the same thing: black coffee, blueberry muffin, and he always left a $5 tip. Sophie always smiled when she saw him. "How are you today, Mr. Mitchell?" "Better," he'd say. "Getting better." The other customers eventually learned who he was, what he'd done, and when he walked in, there were nods, handshakes, quiet thank yous. He never sought attention, never told his stories unless asked, but his presence spoke volumes. One morning, about 6 months after that rainy Tuesday, a young man approached Daniel's table. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his hands. "Excuse me, sir, are you Sergeant Major Mitchell?" Daniel looked up. "I am." The young man took a breath. "My dad served with you in Afghanistan. He talks about you sometimes. Says you saved his unit." Daniel gestured to the empty chair. "What's your dad's name?" "Lieutenant Ryan Walsh." Daniel's expression softened. "Walsh. Good man. How's he doing?" The young man sat down. "He's good. Teaches history now. Has 3 kids. Living a good life. Because of you." Daniel shook his head. "Because he fought hard and got lucky." The young man pulled something from his pocket. A challenge coin. Well worn. "He wanted me to give you this. Said you'd understand." Daniel took the coin, turned it over. It bore the insignia of their unit, and on the back, scratched in by hand, 3 words: "Still here, still fighting." Daniel's eyes glistened slightly. "Tell your dad I said the same." The young man nodded, then stood, hesitated. "Actually, sir, I'm joining the army. Leave for basic in 2 weeks." Daniel looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because of men like you and my dad. Because someone has to." Daniel extended his hand. "Then serve with honor." The young man shook it firmly. "I will, sir." After he left, Daniel sat for a long time, staring at the coin. Sophie came over with a fresh coffee. "On the house," she said. "You've already paid enough." Daniel smiled. "We all pay somehow. The question is what we do with what we've paid for." She sat down across from him. "What did you pay for?" Daniel thought about it, then said, "The chance to come back, to try again, to be better. That's worth something." She nodded. "You're helping a lot of people now." He looked at her. "So are you. Every person who walks through that door, you treat them like they matter. That's not small." Sophie smiled. "I learned that from you." 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a room full of veterans at Lieutenant Chen's support group. 40 men and women, all struggling in different ways. He didn't have a script, didn't have notes, just spoke from experience. "I'm not going to tell you it gets easy," he said, "because it doesn't. Some days are still hard, really hard, but it gets manageable. You learn to carry it better." He looked around the room. "I was living under a bridge 2 years ago. Thought I was done. Thought there was nothing left." He paused. "I was wrong. There was. I just couldn't see it yet." A woman in the back raised a hand. "How did you find it?" Daniel smiled slightly. "I didn't. It found me. In the form of brothers who wouldn't let me disappear. In the form of strangers who decided to show compassion. In the form of people who reminded me that I still had value." Another veteran asked, "What if you don't have brothers like that?" Daniel nodded. "Fair question. Then you find new ones. You come to places like this. You reach out. You ask for help, which is the hardest thing a soldier can do, but it's also the most important." The meeting lasted 2 hours. Afterward, people came up to Daniel one by one, shook his hand, shared their stories, asked for advice. He listened to all of them, gave his number to anyone who asked, promised to answer no matter when they called, because he knew what it was like to need someone and find no one. And he'd sworn he'd never let another veteran feel that way if he could help it. That night, he sat in his apartment, looking at the photo on his wall. It was a picture of his old team, taken in Afghanistan, all of them young, muddy, exhausted, but smiling. Most of them were still alive. Some weren't, but all of them had shaped who he was. And he honored them by continuing to live, by continuing to fight, by continuing to show up. His phone buzzed. Text from Reeves. Heard you spoke at the meeting tonight. Proud of you, brother. Daniel typed back. Couldn't have done it without you. Reeves replied immediately. You did it the moment you walked into that coffee shop and asked for water. That took more courage than anything you did overseas. Daniel stayed at the message for a long time. Then he typed, Thank you for seeing me. Reeves sent one more message. We never stopped. Every Tuesday, Daniel still went to the coffee shop, ordered his coffee and muffin, left his tip, talked to whoever needed to talk. And sometimes, when the rain came down hard against the windows like it did that first morning, he'd look outside and think about the man he used to be. The man standing in the rain, invisible to the world. And he'd remember that everyone you pass on the street has a story. Everyone you dismiss has a history. Everyone you ignore has fought battles you'll never understand. And sometimes, all it takes is one person paying attention to change everything. Sophie still worked behind the counter. She'd been promoted to manager, and every new employee she trained heard the same story on their first day. 2 years ago, a man walked in here asking for water, and I almost turned him away. She'd point to Daniel's usual table. That man is a war hero, saved countless lives, and I almost treated him like he didn't matter. She'd look the new employee in the eye. We don't do that here. Every person who walks through that door matters. Treat them that way. The story spread, not because anyone sought fame or recognition, but because it was too important not to share. Other coffee shops started adopting similar policies. Other businesses created veteran programs. Other communities started looking out for the men and women who'd served and fallen through the cracks. And Daniel kept showing up, kept counseling, kept answering calls in the middle of the night from veterans who needed to hear that someone understood. Because he did understand. He'd been there, and he'd made it back. Not alone, never alone, but with the help of brothers who wouldn't let him fall. With the help of strangers who chose compassion. With the help of people who decided that everyone deserves dignity. Especially those who fought for it. So now I ask you, have you ever walked past someone without really seeing them? Have you ever made a judgment based on appearance without knowing their story? Have you ever turned away someone who just needed the smallest act of kindness? Write about it in the comments. Share what you learned. Because stories like Daniel's remind us that heroes don't always look like heroes. Sometimes they look like people who need help. Sometimes they're standing in the rain asking for water. Sometimes they're invisible until someone decides to truly see them. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe. Share it. Help us make sure that every veteran knows they matter. That every person struggling knows they're not alone. That every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, look closer. See deeper. Because the person you pass on the street might be someone who once carried the weight of the world. And the least we can do is carry them for a while.